Keenan Allen has been a pretty big disappointment for the Chicago Bears so far. And it makes you wonder if Ryan Poles would be better off trading him now at the NFL trade deadline if they're just going to let him walk away in free agency this offseason anyway.
You are Locked On Bears, your daily Chicago Bears podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
This is Locked On Bears, and I'm your host, Lauren Cox. I'm here to bring you your daily, in-depth Chicago Bears news and analysis. You can follow me on Twitter at CoxSports1, and you can follow the podcast at Locked On Bears on TikTok, Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, and the Locked On Bears YouTube channel, where you can keep up with all of our video podcasts as well. Thanks for making Locked On Bears your first listen today. We're part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Today's episode is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use our promo code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off your first purchase. On the show today, we look at the prospect of potentially trading away Keenan Allen at the NFL trade deadline after the Bears just traded for him, 7 months ago, earlier this offseason. And some people have even gone as far to suggest the Bears should trade away DJ Moore. That one we won't give too much consideration to, but we'll just talk about why that wouldn't be a good idea and isn't going to happen and isn't likely in any way, shape, or form. And then we'll wrap up looking at Khalil Herbert as a trade, target here, and more specifically, where he could find landing spots on other teams. Now that it is the trade deadline, we can look at, okay, right now who's in need of a running back that could be a good trade partner for the Chicago Bears on deadline day. Always a risk putting out a podcast the day of the trade deadline that, if you don't listen to this first thing in the morning or by early afternoon, the deadline's in the afternoon, trades could have already happened and could change some things. So if you listen to this, later on in the day, I apologize if other trades have happened here that I just don't know about because I can't time travel to be on top of everything. But in the lead up to deadline day, with the Bears' last 2 losses now, there's been this growing murmur about whether or not the Bears should trade Keenan Allen. And it's important to note on the front end here, I have not seen any really concrete reporting that say the Bears are interested in that at all or that other teams have called about it. There really hasn't been any true fire to this smoke at this point, right? It's mostly been Chicago Bears fans looking at the reality of the Keenan Allen situation and thinking, hey, this might be in the best interest of the team, as opposed to something that really has much momentum behind it. We can say right now, I don't think Keenan Allen is going to be traded at the trade deadline. It's more a question of should they? That's what's really worth the discussion. Not so much will they, won't they, but should they or shouldn't they? I don't think they will. I think Ryan Poles and Matt Eberflus don't want to send any kind of message of selling, at the trade deadline. So they're not going to trade away a veteran wide receiver that, with Keenan Allen, you're a better football team than without Keenan Allen. And I don't think we're going to see Ryan Poles make a move that makes the football team worse in that regard. Even if you're getting some kind of draft pick that's maybe better for your team in the long run, they're not going to see a move that makes this Bears team worse. So that on the front end, I think is the reality of the situation. But you can understand where you're paying Keenan Allen a lot of money and you're not getting the kind of production you expected you would be getting out of a player who just had the best season of his career last year with the Los Angeles Chargers and only cost you a 4th-round pick, and you thought he was going to be a quarterback's best friend and one of the key catalysts of an improved Bears offense this season. And we've really gotten none of that. A couple of nice touchdowns against the Jacksonville Jaguars, but haven't really had the kind of production from Keenan Allen that we came to expect, perhaps with high expectations. And so then you add on to that he's in the last year of his contract. The Bears have said, hey, yeah, we're going to feel this one out. Didn't sign him to an extension right away or anything like that. Everything is trending towards he'll be a free agent this offseason and is likely to sign somewhere else this offseason. And so if you feel like he's underwhelming on your roster right now and he's not going to be here next year, so he's going to leave as a free agent for nothing, why not then consider seeing what you could get for him on the trade market to recoup some of what you gave up in that 4th round pick that you traded him away for. You're probably not going to get that exact pick back. But part of why the Bears got him for a 4th round pick was because they were able to take on that salary. And given that you've already paid a lot of that money to him, the Bears don't need to clear more salary cap space right now for Keenan Allen in that stretch. Like, they can just keep a lot of that salary cap on their books and then allow other teams to get Keenan Allen at a cheaper salary and get a better draft pick in return. You could send him to a contending team like the 49ers or the Buccaneers or the Texans or the Steelers and say, hey, listen, we will pay the vast majority of Keenan Allen's contract so you can get him really cheap, but you have to give us a better draft pick if we're going to eat all that salary cap space for you. And maybe you can get something close to a 4th round pick, if not maybe a 4th round pick back for him, just because you're giving away the talent at a discount for them from a salary cap standpoint. And in the meantime, you can have more of an offensive focus on receivers that are going to be here for the long run, right? So that Caleb Williams can spend more of his time throwing to DJ Moore and Rome Odunze, because those are guys who are going to be here for years and years and years. Whereas Keenan Allen's going to be gone anyway. So, is it worth Caleb Williams continuing to kind of build that chemistry with him? Or, could you just move on and kind of get on with the future of the wide receiver position in Chicago? On the other hand here, I think Keenan Allen's struggles in Chicago are more about the offense around Keenan Allen than things Keenan Allen himself is doing wrong. That I don't think this is as much of an issue of Keenan Allen being more washed than we thought he would. And I think it's more of an issue of the Bears struggling to properly utilize Keenan Allen in this offense. And I think if Keenan Allen went to another team, he might still play really well for them, right? Like, if you look at the wide receiver separation metrics, he's still creating separation at a pretty significant level here. He's doing better at creating separation than DJ Moore or Rome Odunze, and better than a lot of wide receivers in the NFL. I just think that his role in the offense isn't utilizing him correctly. Like, you look at some of his stats this year compared to previous years in terms of the role, he's averaging the deepest average depth of target in his career. The Bears are throwing the ball to Keenan Allen farther downfield than he has at any other point in his career. And you'd think at this stage of his career, you'd be throwing Keenan Allen shorter and closer to the line of scrimmage. But instead, this offense has been throwing to him deeper and deeper compared to years past. And, he's still averaging a decent yards after catch per reception compared to previous years. He's catching contested catches at a high rate. When the ball is contested, he's making the difficult catches through contact. I know he had a drop on Sunday, but hasn't been dropping the passes at a super high rate. Like, individually, Keenan Allen's not doing terribly. You can find plays on the All-22 where he doesn't separate stuff. Like, don't get me wrong, he's not a perfect receiver. He's not dominating out there by any means. But he is still doing things at a high level, and I think a better offense could get more out of him. Like, it would feel like DeAndre Hopkins, going to the Kansas City Chiefs, right, where he has 2 touchdowns last night in Monday Night Football and looks great, and all of a sudden he's not washed up like we thought he was in Tennessee, and maybe Tennessee's offense was the problem, not DeAndre Hopkins. It feels to me like the same thing could be the case with Keenan Allen if he went to San Francisco or Houston or whatever. I think they'd get a lot more out of him than the Bears are, not because all of a sudden he's a better wide receiver, but because the offense found ways to utilize him better. So I think Keenan himself is not so much the problem with what's going on with the Bears, and it's a little bit more Shane Waldron, and to some extent maybe Caleb Williams as well, but more so Shane Waldron and the utilization of these weapons, not the players themselves. That's also why anybody throwing out a DJ Moore trade is fooling themselves, and it's just kind of being ridiculous in this process as well. Like, I think you can make a stronger argument why it would be worth trading Keenan Allen, even if that's not going to happen. But there's not really an argument to trade DJ Moore, not a legitimate one. And that certainly is even less likely. Whatever close to zero Keenan Allen is, DJ Moore is a 0.0% chance of being traded heading into this deadline. And I kind of want to go through why and how I think we're getting this wrong, and also what kind of mess that would leave for the Chicago Bears here at wide receiver next on Locked On Bears. This episode of Locked On Bears is brought to you by our friends at Game Time, the best way to get tickets for all of your favorite live events. I have the Game Time app on my phone. I use it all the time to go to concerts, comedy shows, Bears games, NBA games, hockey games. I mean, you name it. They've got all of your live events covered. And I love the Game Time app because you can see a panoramic view from the seat that you're purchasing the ticket for before you buy the ticket. So you know exactly what you're going to be getting when you arrive at the venue. And with Game Time, you can also turn on all-in pricing, so you know exactly how much that ticket's going to cost before you get to checkout. There's none of those added fees at the end of the process that make them cost way more than you thought they would. So with Game Time, it makes the process a breeze. That's why we always say, take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use our promo code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem that code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off. Download Game Time today. What time is it? Game time. The Locked On Bears podcast is also brought to you by our friends at FanDuel Sportsbook, America's #1 sportsbook. Get ready to tackle all of the NFL action, even live during games, because right now new customers can bet $5 and get $150 in bonus bets if you nail that first bet. So when you get a hunch in the middle of the game, you can check out the latest stats, view live play-by-play, and so much more on the same page that you placed your bets. So if you want to put $5 on the Chicago Bears, you can look ahead to Bears Patriots, where the Bears are 6.5-point home favorites on FanDuel Sportsbook. Or if you want to pick the Bears straight up, the money line is -300 and a low over-under of just 38.5 points. A $5 bet on any of those, you get those right, boom, you're getting an extra $150 in bonus bets on top of your winning. Just visit FanDuel.com to join today. Never waste a hunch and make every moment more with FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL. The Bears are not going to trade DJ Moore. They're probably not going to trade Keenan Allen either, but they're definitely not going to trade DJ Moore. And maybe on the front end, that right away sounds to you, yeah, of course they're not going to trade away DJ Moore. Lauren, why would you even talk about this? But unfortunately, more than one Bears fans have put that out as a possibility here. And it feels mostly like personality based as opposed to like performance based. Whereas like the Keenan Allen stuff feels a little more performance based. Like, okay, he's expensive and he's going to be a free agent, and so you might as well get something for him if he's underachieving anyway. Like DJ Moore is still a good, productive wide receiver in your offense. He's also, underwhelming a little bit and producing at a lower level this year than last year and in years past. But he's still a high quality receiver that you want to have on your football team, not only in the short term, but in the long term. But there's sort of this, I think, growing discontent among Bears fans with what they see as a growing discontent of DJ Moore. And this, again, I've made this comparison in the past, but I think the more this drags on, the more apt it feels. Like the ways people talk about DJ Moore and sort of the difference between perception and reality here feels like the modern version and wide receiver version of the Jay Cutler conversation all over again, where it's like people outside of the team and the organization take the snippets of personality and audio and video that we see of DJ Moore during games and in interviews, and we extrapolate, I don't even want to say we, and they extrapolate that to being some sort of problem in the locker room or some sort of malcontent or some sort of issue with the team or with his teammates or with the coaching staff or whatever it is, you want to sort of craft the narrative that fits what you want it to fit around DJ Moore, when in reality, he's a guy who, yeah, he's got a slightly different personality. He isn't, your buttoned up cookie cutter coach speak, never says or anything or reacts in any way, football player, but he's not like a diva either. So the two things that have really sort of sparked this week, I mean, obviously with the trade deadline happening, that's sort of the main impetus, but like the two new things that happened. One, there was a play in the game against Arizona where Caleb is extending the play, and you could see DJ Moore sort of like pulls up seemingly a little bit like limping mid-play and walks towards the sideline and walks all the way over to the bench and sits down, while the play is still going on. And that's not a great look. I'll agree with, I'll meet anybody in the middle there. Like, yeah, not a great look. However, if DJ Moore was truly injured on the play, do you want him staying out on the field? He's not going to be open, and he's going to be risking making the injury worse or taking a hit or whatever it might be, and he's just going to kind of get in the way at that point. I mean, I guess you could make the argument that he could absorb some coverage, right? He could occupy a defender, but him having one cornerback stand with him versus him walking off the field to protect himself is not the difference, I think, in that play. If he's truly injured on that play and limping, it's sort of it appears to be that way. I guess we don't know. He stayed in the game, whatever, but he came back in the game and wasn't missing significant time as a result. But nonetheless, I feel like that one play is okay. Maybe there's a little bit there, but not anything major. And then he did an interview on, I want to say it was 670 The Score, one of the Chicago radio stations, and was asked about Matt Eberflus's control over the locker room, and was asked directly, has Matt Eberflus lost this locker room? And his answer was something along the lines of, I want to say no, he has not lost the locker room, et cetera, et cetera. And the way he said, I want to say no, people are reading between the lines and that and saying, oh my God, is DJ Moore calling out Matt Eberflus? Again, it feels like some degree of reaching and some degree of people painting the kind of narrative they want to see in the situation, when really it's like 3 seconds of audio in an interview here and 3 seconds of video in one play in one game. Like, none of that makes DJ Moore someone you would want to get rid of or someone who doesn't want to be here. Like, none of that, I think, is really based in much reality at all. The Bears just gave him a huge contract extension. They want him to be here for a while. He wants to be here for a while. He just bought a house. We saw on Hard Knocks. He's only 27 years old. He's entering the prime of his career. We've got another 4, 5, 6 good years of DJ Moore left in the NFL and in Chicago. Like, he's a good player. He is not part of the problem. And if you were to move DJ Moore, your team gets significantly, significantly worse. And that's true with Keenan Allen as well here. Like, something that gets a little bit overlooked, even in the Keenan Allen should they not trade him conversation, is like, if you trade Keenan Allen, what do you got left at wide receiver? DJ Moore and Rome Odunze, sure. And then what? Not much else. And certainly, if you traded away DJ Moore, which again is basically ridiculous at this point, you have Keenan Allen and Rome Odunze. And then Keenan walks as a free agent. You got Rome Odunze. That's your whole future wide receiving core. Like, that's why DJ Moore is just not going to happen. But even back to Keenan for a minute here, like, if you traded away Keenan Allen, you would have Moore, Odunze, and then Tyler Scott's your new number 3, or is DeAndre Carter your new number 3? Which one do you feel better about? And then the other one's your number 4. Like, if you want to spread teams out, you're putting DeAndre Carter and Tyler Scott out on the field, or you're calling up from your practice squad preseason hero Colin Johnson, or Green Bay Packers reject Samori Toure, or Caleb Williams' college best friend John Jackson. But like, the Bears don't have a lot of depth at wide receiver. And what scares me about that is, like, if you traded away one of those guys and you're down to 2 top wide receivers, if either one of those guys were to get hurt, even just for half a game or a drive, and you got nothing at receiver, you got one guy, that is not enough of an offense to support Caleb Williams. Like, if you think the passing game is struggling right now with Moore, Odunze, and Allen out there, imagine if you trade one of those guys and one of those other guys gets hurt, and all you got left is one of those 3 wide receivers in the field. What do you think the offense is going to look like then? That's why they're not going to trade Keenan Allen. That's why they're definitely not going to trade DJ Moore. And that's why it's even a hard sell to say for sure whether they should or shouldn't trade Keenan Allen. I find myself feeling like, if we were in charge of the organization, it's probably in their best long-term interest to trade Keenan Allen, but it's not a realistic thing to happen right now given the state of the coaching staff and the GM and everything else. And you don't want to show that to the roster, but nonetheless, I don't think either of those are something we need to spend a lot of time on trade deadline day worrying about up to the deadline. We can kind of lay those to rest here. Instead, it's about what's going to happen with Khalil Herbert. That's really the thing that could have some real action here, that teams are interested, teams have called, and you're wondering if maybe he could find a better home instead of the Bears just kind of leaving him as a healthy scratch on the bench. So we'll take a look at some of the potential suitors for the backup Chicago Bears running back next on Locked On Bears. The Locked On Bears podcast is sponsored by BetterHelp. BetterHelp provides online therapy that's here to help you be the best version of yourself. Especially coming up on the Thanksgiving holiday, it's good to find gratitude and also be thankful for ourselves and the things we enjoy about ourselves, not just for other people in our lives, but also the things that we do well and that make us our best selves. And therapy can help bring the best parts of that out of you. I do online therapy, and it's a really important part of my own personal mental health regimen. That's why I'm happy to talk about BetterHelp here on the podcast. If you've been thinking about starting therapy, you should give BetterHelp a try. It's entirely online. It's designed to be convenient, flexible, and suited to your schedule. Let the gratitude flow with BetterHelp. Visit betterhelp.com/lockedon to get 10% off your first month. That's BetterHelp, HELP.com/lockedon for 10% off. The Bears aren't going to trade either their top veteran wide receivers, but they may trade their backup running back here. At least they're going to try to trade their backup running back. As we know, I think it was announced over the weekend, the Bears reportedly granted Khalil Herbert permission to seek a trade ahead of the deadline here. And it was kind of thought that he could be on the block anyway, considering they made him a healthy scratch and promoted Travis Homer above him on the running back depth chart after Homer came off of injured reserve. And so we would expect somebody's going to give the Bears something for Khalil Herbert, but who and how much? Well, I guess we talked earlier this year about the how much. It's going to be a late day 3 draft pick, a 6th round pick, a 7th round pick. Maybe they give you a 5th and you send them a 6th or a 7th back, a swap like that. But it's not going to be anything that has a huge impact on your draft. But the idea is that Herbert's going to be a free agent this offseason anyway. You're not going to re-sign him. So why don't you get some kind of draft pick for him instead of getting nothing for him? So then it's like, okay, well, which teams might be willing to give up a draft pick for Khalil Herbert to make that swap? And you got to think, given that Herbert's going to be a free agent, it's going to be a team that's contending, or at least feels like they need to add a bump at the running back position to salvage something here, right? Whether it's a desperate coach trying to save his job by adding at running back, even if maybe they're not going to be a Super Bowl contender, but they feel like, oh no, I got to keep trying to save my skin so I don't get fired at the end of the year or during the season, or a team that's actually like, hey, we're a running back away from our offense really, really being complete. I think there's a couple teams that fall into each of those categories. I think if I'm Khalil Herbert and the Bears give me permission to seek a trade, or my agent, I am calling the San Francisco 49ers and I'm saying, hello, Kyle Shanahan. Would you like me to be a running back in your offense? I've noticed that when you guys hand the ball off to running backs in your offense, they do really, really well. And I would like to do really, really well in your offense. I think Khalil Herbert has more talent than Jordan Mason and Isaac Guerendo, who are the 2 top backs in San Francisco right now with Christian McCaffrey out. I know, they've had some good games here, but some of that's, the scheme and the offensive line. I've been a big factor there. Like, I think Herbert could be a nice boost for the 49ers, and he's really cheap. He's on the end of a rookie contract as a 6th round pick. It's not going to cost them much on their salary cap either. So they could give up a late round pick and say, hey, Herbert is a boost to this rushing game while we still await Christian McCaffrey's sort of season-long fate here in that offense. That'd be a nice boost for them and a great spot for Khalil Herbert, his best shot at getting a Super Bowl ring, that's for sure. I also think Cincinnati Bengals are in a similar category. Not as good, I think, as the 49ers in terms of the pure overall opportunity here, but another contending team with a pretty good offense where, I think Khalil Herbert might even be more talented than Chase Brown, their 5th round pick last year. But even if he's not, their backup running back, Zach Moss, was just injured with a neck injury and is out indefinitely. So they need a number 2 running back, even if Herbert doesn't come in and be a number 1. Chase Brown's had a big game against the Raiders, rushed for 120 yards. But prior to that, I don't know that he was, wowing me. And I think Herbert could come in there and, if not take over as the number 1 back, at least be a significant factor in that backfield and add more of a rushing dynamic to this Bengals offense. They rank in the bottom 3rd in the NFL in pretty much all of the major rushing stats, whereas Joe Burrow's still having a pretty darn good season as a quarterback. That could be fun for Herbert as well and get him some better opportunities. And again, like, more real contention perhaps there than what he's getting right now from the Chicago Bears. Those feel like the better case scenarios for Herbert to find a new team and maybe have some success and, just play well enough to earn a bigger contract this offseason. If he goes to a bad team, then it's just about padding that stats and trying to earn that bigger contract, right? You're not necessarily thinking about winning Super Bowls if you're traded to, say, the Las Vegas Raiders. But the Las Vegas Raiders are the worst running team in the NFL and could use more talent at the running back position. You're like, well, but Lauren, the Raiders are bad. You think they're really going to want to add at the trade deadline? It's like, yes, Antonio Pierce wants to save his job. They just fired their offensive coordinator, Luke Getsy. No surprise there. Plus, O-line coach and quarterbacks coach, I think. Their backfield is Alexander Madison and Zamir White and Amir Abdullah. Like, Herbert could step in there and be the number one running back with the Raiders and try and get some real playing time there and just grind out a tough season there, hit free agency, and try and cash in a little bit more. I would feel bad for him going to the Raiders, but he would get more playing time than he's getting in Chicago and could help himself make more money than he's getting by sitting on the bench in Chicago. One other team I'll throw in there in a similar spot is the Dallas Cowboys. Mike McCarthy trying to save his job. Brian Schottenheimer, their offensive coordinator, trying to save their jobs here. It's a mess in Dallas. I don't think they're going to, go on some kind of playoff run, but they're dealing with a Zeke Elliott problem. He was suspended, sort of, or was a healthy scratch, but as a punishment for some kind of stuff going on in Dallas. It's a mess in Dallas. So, Rico Dowdle was their top running back this past week. They also have Dalvin Cook, but I think Khalil Herbert could go there and easily be the number 2 with Elliott. And if the Elliott stuff they think is going to linger on and keep being a problem, or if they, could they trade Zeke Elliott at the deadline? I mean, you never know, I guess. Could Herbert be a nice option for them where Mike McCarthy's desperate and says, let's upgrade this roster with somebody cheap who doesn't cost us a lot of salary cap space or a lot of draft picks, but can be an upgrade at running back? I wouldn't rule something like that out. Again, would feel bad for Khalil Herbert, but at least, again, I think for Herbert, the rest of the season is not about going to, not about winning a Super Bowl. It's about playing, proving to the NFL again that he's still really good to earn more than a veteran minimum contract this offseason, because that's kind of what he's trending for right now if he's just going to be on the bench all season with the Bears. So that's why he gets to seek a trade, and why I hope the Bears can find a good spot for him to go on in his career, because I think he's a really good running back, and I think some team is going to be very happy. The next team he plays for is going to get some good production from Herbert, and I think the Bears should use him more than they have and should have him be a part of this offense and can be a valuable part of this offense. And I think they're squandering a talent that they do have in the backfield in the same way that they're not getting the most out of Keenan Allen. They're not getting the most out of Rome Odunze. They're not getting the most out of Cole Kmet. They're not getting the most out of Khalil Herbert either. And that's not his fault, so I hope he gets a chance to play somewhere. I don't know that we'll have to do a big Khalil Herbert breakdown if he's traded on trade deadline day. Like, that's not going to be the focus of tomorrow's podcast, is picking up the pieces after the Bears make the blockbuster Khalil Herbert trade. But if they do make any other big moves, which, again, we're expecting a quiet trade deadline day for the Bears, but if they make any big moves, you can be sure we'll break it down for you on tomorrow's podcast. And if not, we'll get you ready for the Bears-Patriots game coming up. We'll have crossover Thursday, the day after, with our friend from Locked On Patriots. I can promise you there will be no election talk anywhere on this podcast tomorrow or at any point during any of the Locked On Bears history. You'll notice we can't control our YouTube ads, but if you're a listener of the podcast, you've not heard a single election ad run in any episodes of Locked On Bears. We, as a Locked On Podcast Network, decided collectively we're not going to take any political campaign ads from either side here, which, as you may or may not know, there's a lot of money in political ads. We could have taken a bunch of political ads and made a lot of money on playing plenty of political ads for you throughout the podcast. No, this is an escape from all of that. So no matter what happens for you on Election Day, you can be sure that the Locked On Bears podcast is going to be here for you every single day to make sure you get another opportunity to bear down.